You've seen all the videos with home selling advice. Today on this episode, we're going to dig deeper on some issues. Now let's face it, no seller wants to find himself saying,
"Congratulations."
Thanks.
Look, I'm sorry about before. I mean, I'm sure I'll learn to like her, Jerry.
Yeah.
Come on, what's the matter?
I think I may have made a big mistake.
rightfully so. I'm going to go past the obvious advice that most home sellers already know and actually talk to you about 5 selling mistakes that can really stress you out. The goal of this in this episode is to bring these pitfalls to your attention so you can be a smarter home seller and hopefully avoid mistakes of home selling quicksand. Now, most home sellers focus on the preparation of their house, which is very, very important. Yes, you need to declutter. Yes, you need to work on your curb appeal and interior touch-ups, but there is quite a bit more than just getting it ready to hit the market. I want you to be a smart and less stressed home seller. So here are my 5 home selling pitfalls you'll need to be aware of. Number 1, the packing mistake. Every seller feels like a hoarder at some point during the packing process. People don't know how much stuff they have jammed in the back of their closets and up in their attics or in the kitchen cabinets until they start pulling it out to pack for their move. Now, don't wait until after you have a contract to do this. You already have to declutter to get your house ready to put it on the market. Go one step further and fully declutter, which means going through every cabinet and closet and getting rid of everything you don't want to take with you to your next home. Yes, it is a lot of work and on the front end, but the payoff is a huge stress reduction when it comes to the time to the move. There are going to be so many other things you need to focus on while selling and moving. Number 2, the disclosure mistake. There are a few pitfalls that can actually happen here. We give out the seller disclosures in advance of putting the home on the market, so you can give yourself adequate time to go through the house and think about the questions. What you don't want is to be rushing around to fill out the disclosures while you have the added stress of negotiating an offer or finding another home to purchase. At the same time, we want to avoid the buyer discovering a ceiling or attic stain during the home inspection due to a roof leak while you were living in your house, and your reply to their finding is, "Oh yeah, that was from a roof leak, but we fixed it." Unfortunately, the buyer and the buyer agent begin to hallucinate. What else did you forget to disclose? And this type of buyer hallucination, whether justified or not, can kill the deal. The other benefit of doing this before it hits the MLS is because agents and buyers will often ask about the age of the roof, the plumbing, or something they notice going through the property that can often be addressed or explained in the seller disclosures. Thirdly, we have as a part of California law to provide the buyer within 7 days of acceptance of the offer. And if this is delayed, then it will lengthen the amount of time a buyer has to remove contingencies and possibly back out of the transaction. Nothing's worse than having an extended period of time for the contingency and then the buyer have to actually back out of the deal. Much rather have the buyer review them as soon as possible in the transaction. Also, I recommend watching my video on seller disclosures, which will give you the framework on how to answer each of the questions. Number 3, the financing mistake. Congratulations, you got an offer on your perfectly prepped house. The offer comes through with a buyer pre-qualification letter and you're confident the buyer's ability to close on the loan, but you shouldn't be. To be a smart home seller, you have to dig a little deeper about that lender letter that came through with their offer to you. First, you need to understand the difference between a pre-qual versus pre-approval letter. The terms pre-qualified and pre-approved are often used interchangeably by mortgage borrowers, but they aren't quite the same. Pre-qualifying for a home loan isn't as involved. It simply gives you an idea if you qualify for a mortgage, and if so, how much and what the interest rate would be. Getting pre-approved requires the buyer to provide financial documentation as well as running a credit check. Oftentimes, a lender will run a desktop underwriter approval of the buyer's verified information, which includes the buyer's credit score, in order to issue a pre-approval letter to the buyer. A pre-qual letter, on the other hand, indicates that the lender has verbally spoken to the buyer but hasn't verified the buyer's information. And as a seller, you need to understand both letters are not a guarantee to loan approval. There are still hurdles to overcome in the process, but attaining a pre-approval letter is a must in avoiding the financing mistake of a deal falling apart because of financing. Number 4, the inspection mistake. I have sellers tell me there's nothing wrong with my house, and I obviously totally believe them. But what I also know is that the sellers aren't going through their house with a fine-tooth comb the same way the home inspectors do. Imperfections will be found, even on the most well-cared-for homes. You, as a smart home seller, are going to go into the inspection day knowing the buyer may ask for some repairs, and that's okay. Now, as a seller, you may be thinking, well, I have an as-is contract. I don't have to repair these items. The contract as is means that the seller is not obligated to do any repairs, but it also means the buyer can cancel the contract with their deposit returned, or ask for repairs, or ask for a credit. So then the seller has to decide if you want to do the repairs or run the risk of the buyer canceling the contract and falling headfirst into the inspection pitfall. Now, every transaction is different and should be evaluated individually, but before you make an emotional decision not to do repairs, look at what the inspector found. Are there things that might come up on a different buyer's home inspection that will be likely asked for by another buyer? Are there safety hazards found in your home that you should want to repair just because you're still living there? Is there a water intrusion somewhere, no matter how small, that if stopped will create more damage? So in a lot of cases, it's in the best interest of all parties to do certain repairs. So to be a smart home seller, you need to go into it with realistic expectations. I highly recommend you watch my video on how to prepare for home inspections to prevent you and the buyer from falling into the inspection mistake. Number 5, the appraisal mistake. The buyer's lender needs a third party to verify that your house is actually worth what the agreed upon sale price is. As the proud owner of the house, you know why it's worth every penny that the buyers are willing to pay. Now, they're looking at it from a very clinical way, and they have their guidelines they have to follow. So you can be a smart home seller on appraisal day and make sure your home is ready to show when the appraiser comes out. Yes, appraisers are supposed to look past your boxes and clutter, but they're human too. It only makes sense to have your house looking its best on the day that somebody is going to value it. I also asked the seller to provide a list of upgrades, renovations that they've done along with the approximate cost. Now, if you put a new roof on, put that on the list along with, again, the approximate cost. New AC, recent kitchen remodel or bathroom, or hardscape would all be included on this list. And we give the list to the appraiser so he or she can have all the relevant information on the property along with the comparable sales. Even with all that information, there is no guarantee that your appraisal is going to come in at value. It is actually out of our hands, which makes this a crazy pitfall. Remember, it does take 5 days for the lender to get the appraisal back, so don't expect an answer the next day. Be patient. If the value does come in low, your realtor should be able to advise you on the best course of action. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I hope you found this information useful. I suggest you like and subscribe and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of upcoming videos.